Hey there! Welcome back to another review. This time, the final Ghost in the Shell review for a while. My review of the 2017 adaptation Ghost in the Shell. Now, this is a film that has a lot of controversy. A lot of people are saying it's racist, it's full of whitewashing, and so on and so on. And it's a movie that really did not get good reviews from critics. It was critically disdained. It was slammed by critics. It didn't do that well in the US box office. In fact, it did pretty poorly. It cost about $110 million, and so far to date, it's only made $154.8 million, and that's on a worldwide gross. So, if this movie made any profit, it would be very, very little. And I honestly think that's too bad. Because I personally did not think this was that bad of a movie. I thought it was one of the better and definitely one of the best adaptations of an anime that I've seen in terms of live action. And it's a film that I actually enjoyed quite a bit. Now, I'm basing this off of my opinions on the movie after seeing it a few weeks ago, a little bit after its opening weekend. I saw it in IMAX in 3D, and trust me, folks, it was absolutely worth the extra price for the IMAX and the 3D because this film was absolutely stunning in 3D and in IMAX. And it's a once in a lifetime type thing because there's no way that that experience will be recreated on home video. It was so immersive, I felt like I was inside the world that the film had created. It was really a sight to behold. Now, the movie itself, yeah, it got a lot of critical slamming. Critics were not really that fond of the film for the most part. It was a niche movie for a niche market, and I think it was destined to fail before it even was released. Because, for instance, okay, it's a movie that costs $110 million. It's a franchise that isn't that well known by the mainstream. And the people who do know Ghost in the Shell, a lot of them, a pretty large majority of the fan base, didn't even give the film a chance because of the Twitter backlash and because of the internet backlash on how the film was racist and how it was whitewashing. I personally find that to be a bunch of bullshit, and I'm going to quote the director of Ghost in the Shell, the 1995 anime, and this is his words. Mamoru Oshii. The Major is a cyborg, and her physical form is an entirely assumed one. The name Motoko Kusanagi and her current body are not her original name and body, so there is no basis for saying that an Asian actress must portray her. Even if her original body were a Japanese one, that would still apply. He goes on to say, I believe having Scarlett play Motoko was the best possible casting for this movie. I can only sense a political motive from the people opposing it. If the director of the 1995 anime doesn't think it's a problem, I don't have an issue with it. I never had an issue with it to begin with. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Now, I do feel I can see why some people might be upset with the plot twist in the movie, which I'll get to spoilers soon enough. But even that, I don't mind that because I think it does what science fiction is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you, well, at least science fiction like this, it's supposed to leave you asking questions. And that plot thread definitely does leave you asking questions about what it means to be who you are, about what identity really is. Is it the color of our skin, or is it multiple other factors? So, and also a lot of people have really been harsh against the film because it's not a great adaptation of the 1995 anime. It's not meant to be. Even the 1995 anime is not scene for scene, shot for shot, word for word adapted from the manga. It's has bits and pieces that the director decided to choose to adapt into the anime. So even the anime itself is an amalgam of all these different elements from the manga. So this live action film is basically a lot like the 1995 film, but it does its own thing. So it's also a combination of different elements from the 1995 anime, from the manga, from Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence. I might even have some elements from Standalone Complex, but I'm not too familiar with that particular series, so I can't say for sure. But a lot of it is all from previous incarnations of Ghost in the Shell. And think about it, folks. There's been like, what, 30 years of Ghost in the Shell material? There was no way in hell this movie was going to end up compiling and condensing all of that into one movie. So if you were expecting this movie to be a 100% adaptation of the 1995 anime, I'm sorry, it was never going to be. Also, if you're expecting it to cover all the bases that the anime, the manga, and the other standalone comic series had covered in one film that's only 107 minutes, I don't think you're being fair to the movie. I mean, any movie, that's not fair to any film to expect that out of the movie. So I don't get that. I don't get that criticism about the film, how it's a bad adaptation of the 1995 anime. Well, yeah, it is, but it's not trying to be. It's not meant to be an adaptation of the 1995 anime. It's an adaptation of all these different elements and all these different parts of Ghost in the Shell from all these other different incarnations of the story. It's not just an adaptation of the 1995 anime. So, and I wouldn't have wanted that anyway. I like that it tried to do its own thing and still homage and be as respectful to the original source material as it could, and then also adapt iconic sequences from the anime, from the 1995 film and Innocence in live action. And yeah, they're taken out of context, but it's all in good fun. I think it's okay because it's trying to tell its own story. I would rather this film tell its own story, be different, be unique, than just deliver the same scenes in the same order and the same dialogue as the 1995 film. If I want that, I could just watch the 1995 film. So I had to start out with that because that's had to get that off my chest because I just don't agree with it. I will defend this movie. I'll be the guy who's sitting here defending the movie because I really think it's actually quite good. And I don't think it's as bad of an adaptation of the source material as people say it is. And I don't think it's disrespectful to the source material. And I also do not feel it's racist either. Or Motoko, I do not feel that she needed to be played by an Asian actress. I think Scarlett Johansson was perfectly cast. I mean, look at the anime, the 1995 anime. Look at what Major looks like. Does she look at all 100% Asian? I don't think so. So, and the director of the 1995 anime clearly doesn't think so. So, I don't see what the big deal is. There's even people in Japan who don't give a shit. In fact, this film made a lot of its, actually might have made a profit, just a little bit of profit, thanks to Japan, because it was actually pretty successful in Japan. So, anyway, and it's crazy. It's like the film that all these people are coming up and getting on their soapbox and trying to speak for these other cultures, speak for the Japanese, and they're like eating it up. They're like, we don't care. It was entertaining. It was fun. We didn't have an issue with it. We didn't find it to be racist. We didn't care. Give a flying fuck about the whitewashing. If you do, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal to me, though, because I don't really feel that Major as a character is 100% Asian. I don't feel that that's really how the character is. Her appearance doesn't have to be Asian. Her background can be Asian, but her appearance doesn't have to be. And I also remember reading up somewhere that Major was made specifically to have Caucasian features in order to blend in better into her surroundings. So that's the source material that's saying that. So how is the film really doing the wrong thing by having Major being played by an actress who's very capable and is actually perfect casting for this type of role because of the other roles that she's done in the past, like Lucy and Under the Skin, and I don't see how Scarlett Johansson being cast is a bad thing and equals this movie being racist, and this movie should be blacklisted or bashed because of it. I really don't understand that at all. I don't get it. Now, the film itself is directed by Rupert Sanders, who before this had done a lot of stuff I wasn't impressed with, the Snow White and the Huntsman series and so on. But his direction in this is fantastic. You could really tell he has a passion for this project. He really does an amazing job with the visuals, and yeah, the direction is really, really great. I think it's probably will probably go down as being one of the most underrated directing performances uh, of 2017. Now, the film also features a screenplay by Jamie Moss, William Wheeler, and Aaron Kruger. Aaron Kruger's fingerprints are only on it a little bit. The screenplay it was a tall order to try to take Ghost in the Shell and adapt it into a feature film and take elements from the 1995 anime, elements from the Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, elements from the manga, elements from maybe Standalone Complex, and try to form them into a film that could be accessible to modern, to not modern audiences, but to as wide of an audience as possible. That's probably another reason why the film is PG-13 instead of R, and honestly, I probably would have preferred if it was R, because I think the hardcore violence would have helped really add some more weight to the film. But it wasn't completely necessary, because the action in this, when it was there, was still quite exciting and still well choreographed and well put together. Now, where the screenplay falters is with its dialogue, it was going to run into that. I mean, the anime that it's based on is some of the most exposition heavy and philosophical, diatribe heavy bits of screen dialogue and screenplay that I've honestly seen. So there's a lot that I had to do. So this script had to take those lines of dialogue that would alienate an audience, except for except for a little small niche group of people, and it had to condense it and reconfigure it into a way that would appeal to the average guy who just go in and pop in the movie. And some of the stuff is lost in translation. Other stuff is actually translated better than the anime, in my opinion. It gets a lot of the same sort of themes and all that kind of stuff across, but with less dialogue, and in some instances is showing you it rather than telling you it, which I did appreciate that. There's also a lot of improvements this film makes upon the anime. For instance, the characters, the characterization. I think the screenwriters did a really bang-up job writing these characters. You've had a nice little backstory for Bateau and how he got his robot eyes. It delves more deeply into the whole sort of relationship Major has with the company that she's working for, and with her search for her identity. And I actually did like the twist where you find out that she was an Asian girl who was taken away and then her brain was put into this shell. I like that. And the moment when she gets to meet with her mother, her birth mother, is actually really quite poignant and sad and tragic. And I thought it was a very emotionally powerful scene. And I thought Scarlett Johansson did a great job portraying those emotions of this, this robot who is, not really robot, but she's this Asian brain that's in this Caucasian shell, and she finally realizes who she really is, and it's a very tragic moment, and it actually makes you relate to Major more. It makes you feel for her more. It makes her a more relatable character, which is something that was completely absent in the 1995 anime. There was no reason for me to latch onto her as a character. In this, there's definitely a reason for me to latch onto her as a character, because she's definitely more sympathetic. And that's because of the twist that's so controversial. And I'm glad they went there. The writers didn't have to have this explanation for why ScarJo was the Major. They could have just said, "Nah, we're not gonna explain that." But they chose to do it anyway, and it was actually a really clever twist that I think a lot of people are misinterpreting it. I think a lot of people are pissed and outraged and offended by it, but I think they're supposed to be upset because they're supposed to be angry at the fact that these assholes, they took away everything from her. They took away her childhood. They took away her race. They took away her identity. Everything about her was erased and stripped from her. And then when you find out that's what happened, I mean, you're supposed to be upset, but I don't think you're supposed to be offended. And I mean, I don't think that's the intention that the filmmakers had or the writers had for this plot twist. I actually thought it was actually really clever and ballsy and innovative, and it was something I had not really seen. It was a nice little twist. And was she technically whitewashed? Yes, but in a way that actually made sense in terms of the future that the film was set in, and also, I mean, they took everything away from her. I mean, it was a way to make you connect to the character. I don't think it was intended to be offensive. I don't think that was the point. That's just my personal opinion. Now, another aspects of the script I thought were a little bit better than the anime were some of definitely the stuff with the puppet master. Kuze, you actually get more backstory about the puppet master. You get to see who he is. You get to see that he actually has a connection with the major, and I like that quite a bit. So this is another thing that I actually liked more in this film than the anime was the puppet master character himself. So the writing actually, other than a few clunky bits of dialogue, and it's a bit exposition heavy at times, I think it was actually quite good. So the writing, it was a difficult thing to adapt, and I think they did a pretty dang good job adapting it and doing their own thing with it as well. So it didn't feel like it was just deja vu. Didn't feel like it was a shot for shot remake of the 1995 anime, but in live action. Which, why would you want that anyway? I mean, I'm getting to think that some people would not have been happy no matter what. If they did it, if the film was 100% like the 1995 anime, but in live action, people would call it shit because it's just a shot for shot remake and they wanted something different. Uh, and then if they do get something that's different, that takes elements from the 1995 anime as well as Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, as well as some other Ghost in the Shell material and puts its own spin on things, people are still going to be upset because it's not exactly like the source material. They think it's too different from the source material. But I personally felt that this movie found a great balance between the two. Now, one of the definite standouts about this movie, other than the visuals, are the performances. The only performance I personally felt lacked or I felt that just wasn't really up to snuff was the performance of the main villain of the piece, who is this doctor guy. I'm trying to remember his name. Um, Cutter. Cutter is this guy named Cutter, and I'm trying to okay. Peter Ferdinando is Cutter, the CEO of Hanka Robotics. He was a really bland character. There wasn't a lot of characterization for him, a lot of backstory. He was a pretty weak villain. Now, but but at least there was actually a villain here. In the 1995 anime, it didn't feel like there was really a villain. It was supposed to be the puppet master, but he wasn't very well developed. So it's just kind of like, okay, who's the villain here? Who's the antagonist? So this film definitely does have a clear antagonist. And but Scarlett Johansson I thought was perfectly cast. I thought her performance is great. Is she monotone and robotic? Yes, but she's supposed to be. And I thought she did a great job portraying the role of someone who has a human brain encased in this robotic body. And I think she really did knock it out of the park when she started to show some more actual human emotion starting to bubble underneath the surface. In the scenes where she realizes that she's not the first of these experiments of these shells that Hanka has used. There's been 98 others. Her confrontation that she has with her former mentor is actually quite powerful. The scene where she figures out who she is and reunites with her mother. Like I said, it's very poignant and powerful and emotionally resonant, and a lot of that is because of her performance. So I am not one of those people that thought that her performance was terrible. I think she really did a great job playing Major. Beat Takeshi Kitano plays Daisuke Aramaki. He's wonderful. He doesn't speak a lick of English, but he doesn't have to. It's always nice seeing him again. Michael Pitt was really. I thought he was fantastic as Kuze, and I honestly wanted to see more of him. That's how great he was as that character. Pilou Asbæk as Batal was another standout. Perfect casting. I love the guy. I want to see more of him. That's what makes this so frustrating, is that this movie didn't do that well, is because it's honestly a great origin film that sets things up for future installments in a franchise, and I want to see more. The movie left me wanting to see more, and it probably never happened. So, I mean, that sucks. The critics were treating this like it was the equivalent of Dragon Ball Evolution, and I don't really think it's even in the same league as that god-awful adaptation. Juliette Binoche plays Dr. Olet, who is a mentor to Motoko, who's also known as Mira Killian, Major. And, Peter Ferdinando is Honka Robotic CEO Cutter, and there's a few other people, but that's mainly the main cast. Uh, I think, what's his name? There's a guy who he was in the anime, and he really isn't in this that much. The character was kind of taken out of the film. I know he was in the movie, and he was in the anime more, but he really wasn't in it that much. So I'm just trying to find I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I just reviewed that movie, and I'm completely I can't fucking remember the name of the guy. He was a character that Togusa. Shinhan is in this, and it's Togusa. It's a bit role, but Togusa had a bit role in the first movie as well as in the anime. So it's not surprising that he has a bit role here. You also have an uncredited role of Michael Wincott as Dr. Osmond in the beginning action sequence, which is really cool. I mean, it's Michael Wincott. It's always great to see him again. Same thing for Takeshi Kitano. Um, Now, the cast, like I said, they're really well cast. They do a great job. But really, where the film shines is with its visuals. The visual effects are absolutely stunning. The CGI, the look of the city, all of that, everything is really well done. The film also has some really, really fantastic and excellent practical effects by Weta Workshop. They actually created the geisha robots that you see in the opening sequence, and it's all done practically. And it really is a sight. It really is a really wonderful sight to see. And hopefully more people will do more practical stuff because of the work of Weta Workshop in this film. Those were adapted from the geisha bots from Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence. In Ghost in the Shell, the anime, they were not geisha bots that were attacking. It was just these kind of generic sort of soldiers. So here they had geisha bots, and then they also had these other soldiers. I thought it was actually a nice touch. So those are those kind of differences that the script had and the film had that made it stand out from the 1995 anime. So it didn't feel like I was watching the same movie, which I thought was welcome. I didn't think that was a problem or an issue. I mean, if you see this film for just one thing alone, see it for the visuals. And trust me, if you didn't see it in IMAX and 3D, you missed out. You missed out on an amazing, just enthralling experience that I do not think that the film, when I see it again on home video, is going to live up to. The film might not be as great as I remember it being when I see it on my flat screen without the 3D and without the IMAX. But I did see the film the way it was intended to be seen, though. This movie, when you see it in IMAX and in 3D, if you did get to see it in IMAX and in 3D, you can tell that this film was intended to be seen in IMAX 3D. It was not intended and it was not made to be seen in any other format. So it's a letdown when you see it in these other formats because the visuals don't pop as much. The other aspects of the film don't really grab you as much. I was captivated and enthralled throughout the entire running time by the visuals alone and by the 3D. And 3D lately has been on the downslide, but this is some of the best 3D I had seen since Dread in the theater. It was really, really spectacular. It was a spectacular film when it comes to its visuals. Reminded me a lot of Blade Runner. It was great. It was wonderful. Created a great mood and atmosphere. And I can watch the film again even without the 3D just for the visuals alone. So the casting was great. The directing I thought was really well done. The visuals were fantastic. The cinematography was gorgeous. It was beautiful by Jess Hall. The music by Clint Mansell and Lauren Balfe was great. Was really well done as well. I wouldn't say it was great, but it was a nice. It gave the film a nice bit of atmosphere and mood. It definitely did sound like a retro new wave kind of 80s synth score, and it fit the film perfectly. I would have liked to have heard the Kai Theory's Enjoy the Silence cover that was used in a lot of the trailers. I would have liked to have heard that in the film somewhere, but the score, though, was still pretty solid without that inclusion. The editing by Neil Smith and Billy Rich, it's rich, it's lush. They do a good job editing everything and doing all these things and making all of the visuals and everything blend together seamlessly. Now, I do have some problems with the film though. I personally felt the pacing was a bit too slow at times because it's very dialogue heavy. It could have had more action. That's definitely one of my biggest knocks on the film. There's more action in this for me than there was in the 1995 anime or in Innocence, but it could have used some more hand-to-hand combat with Scarlett Johansson and maybe a little bit more gunplay. Uh, just a little bit more really would have went a long way for this movie. But the bits that are there are very effective. The opening sequence, the assassination sequence with where Major is using her camouflage suit is really it is absolutely. I'm trying to think of the right word to describe it because it's really hard. It's hard for me to put it into words because I loved it so much. It was a great way to open the film. And the other bits of action here and there are good too. Although there are some problems with some of the choreography and some of the effects. In particular, there's a scene near the end when the tank is shooting at a Major and Kuze, and Major ends up doing this sort of jump. She's doing this she's jumping around onto these pillars and stuff like that to get away from the tank blasts. And it's a CGI stunt double of Scarlett Johansson doing all these stunts, and it looks awful. It looks cartoonish. It looks really, really shitty. That was very noticeable, and that was awful. It took me out of the film for a second because it was that bad. It was very wonky. The physics were way off. Um, and other negatives, I mean, it's just mainly the dialogue. It's very dialogue heavy. I could see why some people found it to be a bit boring, but I found the visuals and the story to be engaging enough that I wasn't really that bored, but there were some times where it started to lose me. Not as much as Innocence, thank God. There's not as many preachy uh, lines of dialogue where there's some character who's just randomly pontificating about whatever philosophy that might have popped into their head. these philosophical thoughts that just popped in there, and they're just regurgitating them out into the audience without any context. That isn't there. That isn't there in this movie, and I'm really glad it's not there. But yeah, there's a lot of exposition, and the film is kind of bogged down by that. Uh, so yeah, it's mainly exposition too, a little bit too much exposition in terms of the dialogue. Could use more action sequences. The exposition, of course, if it was lessened a bit, would improve the pacing. And the main villain, Cutter, is pretty weak. So there's that as well. That's another sort of issue I have with the movie. But overall, though, I was actually really surprised and really enthralled and interested and intrigued with the film throughout. I enjoyed the film quite a bit. It would probably be in my top 10, probably my top 5 of the year so far. I enjoyed it that much, and I actually really do like this film more than the 1995 anime. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I like the 1995 anime more than this, because I don't. I actually like this film more. I thought it was a better story. That's the main thing. It had a better story to me than the 1995 anime, and it had better characters. If you disagree, that's fine with me. But I personally feel that this film, this much maligned movie, I personally felt that it did a better job with its story and its characterization than the critically acclaimed 1995 anime. But that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say about Ghost in the Shell, the 2017 adaptation, except I really do recommend that people who watch this video give it a shot sometime. Just give it a chance. If you can't see it in the theater, wait till it comes out on home video, give it a chance. And if you're a fan of Ghost in the Shell, give it a chance under the idea that it's not going to be an adaptation of the 1995 film. It's not going to have everything that you remember from the anime films or the anime series standalone complex or the manga. It's not going to have all of that into one movie. It's not going to have all of that into an 107-minute long film. Go into it with low expectations. Go into it expecting a new take on Ghost in the Shell, but with similar elements, and hopefully you'll enjoy the film. Hopefully you'll feel that it isn't a total slap in the face to the source material. But if you still feel that way after you see it, fine with me. I don't have an issue with that. But I do feel that if you're a fan of Ghost in the Shell, you should at least give this film a chance. Because I personally felt more people should have given this film a chance, even if they were leery of it. If they were curious of it at all, they should have went and saw it. Not let the Twitter sphere or the internet make them feel bad if they go and see it because you're racist and you're supporting whitewashing and cultural appropriation if you went and saw the film in the theater. If you were curious about the film, I really do feel you should have seen it. And if you did see it already and didn't care for it, cool. I have no problem with that. But if you're like me who did see it and you enjoyed it, that's cool too. And I think, this is a film that'll probably be pretty divided. There's going to be people who are going to love it, and there's some people who are going to hate it. I happen to be one of the people that lean closer to the love it side. I don't love it as a whole. I don't think it's the greatest movie ever. But as anime adaptations go, in terms of live action, it's definitely the best one I've seen. I guess I could say Guyver 2 Dark Hero I would like more than this, but that's not really an adaptation. It's more, well, it kind of is, but it's more of its own story based on Guyver. It's not really adapted from any of the manga or the anime. It's basically more of an original screenplay than anything else. And I can get some fun out of the live action Fist in the North Star, but it's not a quality film. This I personally did feel was a quality film, though. Had a budget behind it. It was used really well. You could tell that the money was on the screen. The performances were really well done. They weren't pathetic. They weren't terrible. I thought everybody was casted well. Even the guy who played Cutter was fine. It's just his character didn't really have that much to him. I'm not going to blame the actor because he didn't have that much to work with. But other than a few things that didn't work with the script, for the most part, it was really solid. And the direction by Rupert Sanders, probably the finest hour of his career to date. And yeah, I mean, if you like traditional, if you like sci-fi, like Blade Runner, if you like cyberpunk movies like Johnny Mnemonic and films like that, I really do recommend the movie. And yeah, that's my review of Ghost in the Shell. And I don't know what to say, except it was rated out of 5 stars. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I thought it was that good. Because I only had very few issues. A little bit of pacing problems. Main villain could have been better. I would have liked to have more action. Could have cut back on a little bit of the exposition and dialogue. But other than that, I thought it was a really good movie. So anyway, thanks for watching. And as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.